Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com, Alter Sleeves, as well as Twitch subscribers and Patreon supporters just like yourselves. I am Evan Irwin, and get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey guys, welcome back.
Ruben Bressler.
Happy Wednesday! We're early this week.
Woo! We're coming one day early, as we do, because it's better than no show at all. Now,
right.
Isn't it? Now,
well, and also it's better now that Magic does their stuff on Tuesday.
A little closer.
A little closer.
Now, if you missed our pre-show, subscribers and or patrons get access to our NSFW version early. But with that, we kick it off with our first pick and our giveaway. Get your chance at $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com by typing !raffle in the chat. But sub first to get 2 chances to win and support your favorite streamer with your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we rate tonight. That is thanks to our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every single day. And I am, for one, glad that this week was not barreled over with Dungeons and Dragons ridiculousness. It's still here, and we're still going to talk about it, but it's not the first pick this week.
This is Magic Mics.
It's actual Magic Mics. Okay, cool. So, I guess first up would be to cover the fact that Wizards kind of discussed the leaked rares, but not really. It's really odd. They put out a post that said, on Dominaria Remastered and cards from Phyrexia, all will be one. For those who had not heard, basically all of the rares, or a rare sheet or two, had gotten mixed into Dominaria Remastered booster packs. And that's obviously a problem. And so in this, they kind of focus on it being like a problem for those who open draft boosters and were not satisfied with their purchase due to the presence of future Phyrexian nonsense, but they don't say rares, or, well, they use the rare card images are out there for those who want to find them, which is kind of weird. But I think ultimately, and we discussed this, what's the best thing you're going to be able to do in this scenario? Like, roll with the punches, keep the course. The alternate arts are still not, the alternate arts weren't included in any of the leaks, so you just knew the basic card, images or whatever. So we moved on from that, which is fine. And we have a really super rad, cool freaking promo item. I think this thing is incredibly dope. It is a Phyrexian click wheel that you can get as a part of buying the complete edition at your store. This is for local game stores, and they're going to get them shortly. And you can show off the Phyrexian click wheel. Look at that thing. Look at it.
It's very good.
That thing is dope.
Very good life total counter.
Yeah.
Yep.
That thing is super duper dope. And
I do want to go back to commenting on the commentary from Wizards about the rares.
Sure.
And also how outlets like ours, I mean, we talked about this discussion as well. And Scryfall had a long tweet thread about they've updated Scryfall with these new cards, even though the policy is to not post leaks, because these aren't leaks in the traditional sense. They were in Magic the Gathering packs.
Right.
And
they feel more like spoilers than they do leaks.
Yes.
Right. Nothing nefarious was involved.
Right. People have been able to open these cards in Magic the Gathering packs since Dominaria Remastered came out. So there's nothing nefarious about posting what has been opened in packs.
What came out of a Magic the Gathering booster pack, right? You didn't do anything wrong.
Right. And you said that Wizards made a statement on this. Did they admit to anything?
That, like I said, worried about the user experience of opening DMR and if it impacted them, contact customer service. That's about it. They don't really say, they never even said something like there was a mix up at the factory or whatever. Nothing. It was just, there's some Phyrexian nonsense. And if you're unhappy, here's customer service, and we'll see you next time.
I think that makes total sense, though. Regardless of how it happened, I wouldn't expect them to do anything else. And the fact that they are willing to replace packs, even though someone just got a bonus, I think is above and beyond. You really want them to come out and be like, oh yeah, Joe Schmo, tripped and slipped over a sheet onto a different panel. I'm sure someone's head is on a chopping block over this, and it that's just the standpoint is, I think, exactly what it should be.
I think, would it be nice to have an explanation? Yes. Would it be nice for them to more distinctly note what happened? Fine. I'm not owed an explanation. I don't expect one. No. It's cool. I just thought it was a little silly how they kind of wrote around it. Yeah,
I think it's a little silly how they wrote around it. I think that it's, from my perspective, it's fairly obvious that a sheet or a ream of sheets, some amount of sheets from the rare sheet of regular printing of this set got in the mix somehow by accident. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I understand why they can't comment on that. That's no one in Wizards' fault. That's no one in Magic, like anyone that we've ever talked about on the show's fault. That's a factory issue. We don't even know where the factory is that makes Magic cards.
It's fine. It's not a big deal.
It's fine. It's fine. It's really not a big deal.
Either way, let's keep moving here. So try not to bury the lead too much on this one, but there is a pretty interesting preview at this point that came out, and this was specifically for the new Atraxa Grand Unifier. Now, this is a 7-mana 7/7. I'll bring it up here on the screen so you guys can take a look at it. And it does, as all things in Magic 2023, a lot. There's a lot of words on here. It's got 4 different keyword abilities, yada, yada, yada. The point is that its ability involves revealing cards from your library and getting cards of each separate type. And they list them. And they say the card types are artifacts, battle, creature, enchantment, instant, land, planeswalker, and sorcery. I'm sorry, what? Battle?
Yeah.
Battle?
Battle is an interesting creature type or card type. And they also don't list tribal, which is a card type, although perhaps is about to be downgraded to a super type. Battle is interesting. That sounds like a world enchantment to me.
It could be something along the lines of a saga that is an enchantment, but is a thing. But I feel like you could just list enchantment on there. Is enchantment on the list?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they wouldn't need to do that technically if it was something like that, but...
Yeah, I expect this to be different 100%. Yeah, this is an all-new card type. We haven't had this since Planeswalkers, technically tribal, but, you know, and also what they're doing here is very much like what they did with Future Sight, where they called out Planeswalker on Tarmogoyf, but we didn't see it until Lorwyn. I don't expect to see battles until March of the Machine, or maybe even Aftermath.
I think, well, I was going to say, this sounds like a thing we'll see in Lord of the Rings.
Really?
Battle makes sense for a Lord of the Rings set, personally. Although March of the Machines
is a big battle.
Story is going to be a battle.
Right. And if it's a base card type moving forward, you can have it in March of the Machine and Lord of the Rings if they fit in both places, right? So that'll be fine too.
Yeah. I have no idea what this is going to be. It sounds like a world enchantment, something along the lines of like a Pokemon gym in the Pokemon card game, where it just like changes the entire battlefield in some way, and then when another battlefield comes in, it replaces the old one. Only one can be in play at the same time. It's what that sounds like in my head.
Night day kind of mechanic.
Though. Yeah. Like you can't have Concordant Crossroads and Land's Edge in play at the same time, in much the same way that you can't have the Battle of Helm's Deep and the Battle of the Five Armies in play at the same time.
Now,
like a dungeon.
Yeah, sure. I think there's
dungeon as well.
There's some amount of, I think, dungeon and initiative. And probably the marrying of that. There's something like they like the idea of like a weird little mini game between players, which is kind of interesting. Today on Blog
that's interesting.
Yeah, today on Blog Talk, someone said, "Can you give us any information, like what set it will debut in?" And he said, "There's nothing more I can say yet about battles. It was exciting to work on a new card type, and I'm excited for you all to see it in a future set." So
yeah, that sounds great.
That is very, very exciting. Now, there was a lot of consternation, if you will, about a post today from a post from yesterday from the Wizards Magic Twitter account, and this one focused on Ellis Norn and her many different variants.
Right.
And to which I say, ladies and gentlemen, have we all forgotten that M21 existed and Teferi had 17 different versions of himself there? Because that happened. This is actually not as many as they had Teferis. this is a lot different. They're a lot more sort of stylistically different. Teferi just had like some, some color hues and whatever stuff changing. But, I don't know. Like, are people really upset at this per se?
This is 16, if my count is correct.
Is that right?
No, 15. Because Oil Slick Foil is only foil.
It's only foil, that's right.
The Step and Complete foils are only foils.
Note they do not list the pre-release foil in this. That's another version.
So then that would be 17.
That's another.
I'm guessing that
version.
one. I'm guessing the pre-release version is one of these arts, but with the pre-release stamp.
Right,
yes.
but it is technically a different version.
Yes, but I think this is showcasing the arts more so than the actual whatever. Right. I think this is kind of too many.
Think so?
Yeah. I mean,
if you make make a great card and it's great and everyone's going to love it and it's going to be like the key card of the set.
I mean, sure, but also I'll be the bad guy. I'll be the bad guy here. I don't love Ellis Norn's whole look. I don't get it. It's not a look that makes sense to me. It looks like a bighorn sheep to me.
Ruben,
I'm not.
Hey, what do you got against sheeps?
Wow, bro.
I got nothing against sheeps. Oh. I don't need 17 different arts of bighorn sheep.
What in the world? Ellis Norn rules, man. What are you talking about? Ellis
She's
Norn's
great.
Dope.
She's wonderful.
She's super cool. She's very unique in the way she looks, right? There's no character that looks anything close to Ellis Norn in the world of Magic. You can tell where she is just by a silhouette, which I think is the most important part of any character.
I agree,
but
she's dope. But we don't need 16 copies of her. It makes coverage harder, Evan, Mr. Coverage Man. And you want people to be doing coverage and you want that to be as easy as possible. And also, I don't know, when everything is special, nothing's kind of special. I kind of want a standard thing and a special thing for special occasions. And I think Ellis Norn is one of those occasions, but we don't need 16 copies. And it's just annoying.
I would note, and from a retailer perspective, we sell the standardized version twice as much as any variant of any card. There's literally the other day, I didn't think this was possible, that we are buying some non-foils for more than their foil versions because the foils these days are so prevalent. They've stopped making them unique and hard to find per se. It's just it's a newborn baby. It happens every day.
I've started buying full art cards instead of regular because most of the time they're actually a little cheaper.
That's true.
Which is weird. And also foils are going down in value a ton because the consistency of them, the average foil is unplayable at this point. They're getting worse and worse consistently. I was opening up, I was actually sorting some cards for the EDH show. And I was rearranging and organizing everything to make it easier to pull cards faster. And I was like, look at this fat stack of foils that are all in perfect condition. And look at everything I just opened from Brothers War is absolutely unplayable. I can't use any of them.
Oof.
Terrible.
It's rough. And, and honestly, I've seen some the frame around there. I've seen some problems with, just consistency in the print runs themselves. At some point, if you just open a bunch of packs and there's a stack over here, a stack over there, and you kind of put them together and you look at them, there'll be two different hues of card, within, the same sort of boxes, the same print run or whatever. It's wild. Either way, we got to learn a bunch more about the new set. The green-red sword showed up, which was awesome.
Yeah.
That card
really cool design on that. Yeah. That's Forge and Frontier.
Yes. Sword of Forge and Frontier.
Yeah, very cool design. It's like a lower impact sword, it feels like.
I don't think so. I think that card is...
It's a card advantage sword, which is very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, and it follows the same line of all the other swords, is 3 mana to cast, 2 to equip. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and protection from its colors, which would be red and green for this one. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. You may play an additional land this turn. So you're telling me that with Sword of Fire and Ice, I get a card and a shock. But for this one, I get a card and potentially a land drop, or I just get to play 2 spells if they're cheap and I get them off the top too. So that to me is just a leg up all over. That's great. I think this card's fantastic.
Yeah. So Sword of Hearth and Home goes and gets a land and blinks. Let's see. Sword of Feast and Famine. It feels medium similar. It's a card advantage. Instead of them discarding a card, you exile the top 2, which is better. Untapping all your lands is obviously better than playing an extra land.
Right.
But, you know, and there's nothing. And Sword of Feast and Famine is also SOFAF, which this also is, which is annoying. It's a good one. Like, I also, it doesn't have the blowout potential that something like a Sword of Body and Mind has. It's lots of good little things that add up into a huge thing, which is great.
Which I'll take. And Nerd Girl, I can imagine you have no feelings over this because it's not a limited card.
I have a Commander show now. Thank you.
Okay.
No, I actually... So I don't have a lot of cards, but if you can see this little binder, right? You can't really see it in this camera shot, but I have a little binder and I have a little collection of all of my favorite things, which is a combination of kind of expensive cards that I just really liked and like junk that's got beautiful art. But I do collect one of every sword, so I'm really excited to complete my collection.
There you go.
Nice.
Okay, so you're a sword expert.
I have one of every
breakdown. We haven't gotten a blue-black sword yet, so this is the 9th.
Yes.
Where does this rank?
I actually don't know because I am new to Commander, so I've never really used them. But I opened my Sophie in an actual sealed pool the very first time, and I was like, this is really cool. And then I've just kind of kept it forever. And then as they've come out, I've tried to collect them. So I think that it's great that we're getting the rest of the set. And I have started to put them into my Commander decks, but haven't really seen them much, so... Yay.
Nice. I'm ready for the blue-black sword. Let's complete them, and then let's start doing like some triple color swords or something. Like, let's go nuts.
Some wedges.
We do technically have the Sword of Dungeons and Dragons, which, while it does not grant protection from 2 relevant colors, it does grant protection from 2 relevant creature types, which I think is great. I would love to see that also happen. You know, Sword of Blank and Blank doesn't necessarily be about colors. It can be about whatever. Right. I would be happy with that. That said, let's go ahead and move on here into Gather the Townsfolk. Wedge has returned. The mana source, Wedge, has returned from a very, very long break. I was actually, Wedge is a friend of mine. I've been in contact with him for all these years, honestly, as he's kind of worked on himself and he's kind of gotten himself together here, and he's had an announcement here where he's now making content again and posting to his channel, which is fantastic. So check out the mana source, check out Wedge, tell him you said, you know, hello and welcome back. I thought it was great.
Didn't we literally just talk about Wedge the other day? And I was saying that they were out of the scene before I came into it.
Yes.
Yeah. That literally just came up.
About
him. Yeah. Wow.
Pretty wild. I mean, Wedge was as big as the Professor was.
Yeah, for a long time
they were Professors.
They were neck and neck there for a minute. Yeah.
And this was 20. I'm gonna say 18.
Well, then a whole bunch of drama showed up and like medical bills and them trying to accuse him of doing.
The medical issue was the big thing,
right? And them accusing him of like trying to steal some money or something, and it got to be absolutely ridiculous. And none of that stuff happened.
But hearing Wedge's voice and seeing his video style is just comfort food.
It's nice
at this point for me. So I'm glad that he's back.
There you go. So it's always nice to see an old creator come back, which is always fun. Here is something about a commander party. You align yourself with one of the 5 praetors. You receive abilities for spreading the gift of completion. In stores March 10th through 12th in WPM Premium stores, and you can win a Phyrexia Norn's Annex, which blew my mind that this card's expensive, but it is pretty expensive these days. And that's the participants can get that, which I thought was really neat. As well as
what do I get?
Like an
what
avatar
do I get if
thing.
I go?
The Phyrexian Norn's
I
Annex.
can pay. So if I'm on Team Ellis Norn,
sure,
I got to get glasses. If I'm on Team Ellis Norn and I get a completion counter, and then I pay 3 colorless mana, is that what that means?
When you cast a white spell, you put a completion counter on this card. You begin the game with 1 completion counter and gain the list of abilities at the shown thresholds. So
once I get to my 3rd completion counter,
creatures have first strike. You do 6. Permanents have ward 1, and you get to 9.
So strange.
Creatures get +3/+3, so that's neat. It's kind of, you know,
when 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, put a completion counter on the card.
There you go.
So you got to deal damage.
Well, it's both, right?
And cast a spell.
Right. So whether you're casting spells or whether you're hitting them in the face, you're getting completion counters.
That's so weird.
That's cool. I mean, that's neat. And again, that Norn's Annex is dope. And, people will be wanting that card. That promo is neat. All right. Fair enough. Let's see what else we have here. This was super cool. You gotta look, the competitive world, honestly, is hurting right now. It's not doing great. And so if they're doing anything like really cool or really right, I definitely want to point it out because we want to, encourage them as much as possible. And at the NRG Nerd Rage Gaming Champs, for all the players, they got a little package here, a little framed package with their name and cards that were that they did well with all of last year. Wasn't that incredible? What
a cool idea. Yeah. I love that. Little personalized framed trophies. Trophies are great, but you run out of shelf space. Something in a frame can hang on your wall. Something that has a little bit of nostalgia for the year. Like if you won a modern tournament, it's got one of your modern cards in there. If you won a standard tournament, it's got one of your standard cards in there. Very cool thing for a company to do.
Yeah, no, this is really, really unique. The added touch to it, not just being a generic trophy that they ordered that all say the exact same thing. Maybe they put your name on it kind of deal. No, this is above and beyond, I think, very, very on point with what I would like to see is like prizes, especially for circuits that have like player of the year and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and as someone who is in the marketing business and who wants to make people feel special and unique and all that good stuff like you do, this invested memories bit as sort of the theme and putting the time and effort into making these very special gifts, like game recognizes game. This is dope. Yeah. Like I'm really impressed. So high five to those guys as we move on here into Desperate Ravines, which you can help check out our altar sleeves here. Support the show by using the code MagicMikes at checkout for 5% off anything in that store, including a set of exclusive sleeves featuring the Magic Mikes crew at altersleeves.com/magicmikes. Check them out. Tell them we sent them your way. So for Desperate Ravings this week, it was an interesting post by Sam Stoddard, who is no longer WotC staff, so he can kind of throw out some ideas now and then about Magic cards. And he noted that, in his opinion, one of the risks, or the biggest risk for the long-term health of Magic, is that boxes in recent sets have not held basically any value in the short to medium term. Same goes for most singles. WotC Amazon dumps below distributor costs only make this worse. If holding both singles and sealed product is a negative EV proposition, it's bad for collectors and for stores. Combined with a focus on Commander instead of FNM and tournament play, it makes it less obvious how you even make money running an LGS. While it started with removing MSRP, increasing the amount of direct sales, WotC's push to $1 billion has been capturing more of the ecosystem, etc. He doesn't like the approach, but clearly it's successful. And all that good stuff. But, essentially, he's worried that a huge swath of Wizards leadership has an antagonistic view of stores and players who are making money off of their brands. But, I think one of the things, while and we talked a little bit about this last week, where there can be some doom and gloom. Right. There can be a lot of people who are very unhappy with the way that certain things have happened. But there's also narratives involved in that. So, for example, you can definitely say Baldur's Gate was a giant mess. Baldur's Gate, Commander Legends 2, you took a bath. I don't know. I literally don't know any business that didn't take a bath in that product. Like, it was just an absolute mauling. It was gross. It was terrible. But then you look at something like Dominaria Remastered, which is doing great. Prices are great. Prices are staying high five. You look at Jumpstart 2022. That's a fantastic product that stayed, basically at its price and did not lower. And the singles are doing great. And that's awesome too. So, and even some of the collector boxes, particularly like, Kamigawa collector boxes, those didn't go down. Kamigawa draft boxes, those didn't go down. So like if the product's really good, the price is going to stay there. And when the product is a Baldur's Gate, and the product is the Crimson Vow or the Midnight Hunt, where the Dracula, the vampire set didn't have that many great vampires and the werewolf set didn't have that many great werewolves, like, what the hell, guys? So you're going to have, some problems there.
Yeah. The bigger issue for me is that the old formats have now become rotating formats. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those old cards are losing their value and have lost their value consistently as new cards get released. so consistently that there's no confidence that old cards or even middle-aged cards, we'll call them, will maintain their value. In addition to the fact that now, of course, we have Arena, right? So you don't need to spend as much money on paper cards if all you want to do is play Magic in some way. And it's difficult for your friendly local game store to maintain any level of backlog,
like inventory
to
levels,
be able to buy,
right?
Yeah, inventory. That's the word I was looking for.
Sure.
That is meaningful anywhere, just because of the way that the card design and set design changes have come.
It's also tough because I feel like the Magic community has changed. The local card store, when you go hang out, I've been trying to get more into like paper Magic again post-COVID in my local areas, and there's just nothing going on. There's no more standard. That's going to be a big thing for selling the most recent sets. That's just not a thing anymore. But also the draft culture has kind of died down from what I've seen a ton. I used to be able to go into like any store almost any night of the week and hustle up 7 players to get in a draft with me. And we'd be like, hey, shop owner, what do you got to draft? And they'd be like, well, we have this set. I'd love to get rid of this. And sure, we'll go draft a thing that hasn't been out for a year because we just want to do something different because we draft every single night. I think at one point I was drafting an average of 8 times a week, like, most nights of the week, 1 or 2 times. And that was kind of all over the country. Like I did that in Florida. I did that in San Diego. I've done that in LA. But now I can't seem to drum up a draft to save my life anywhere. And between no drafting and no standard, you're just not going to be moving sets. And I feel like that's a Magic culture thing. Wizards has probably pushed us into that, but that doesn't necessarily mean the product is bad.
And one last thing I wanted to touch on was the idea that when Amazon sells things for very cheap, and like when they sell collector booster boxes for, $110 or $100, whatever crazy silly number it was at the time, which is technically usually below distributor pricing for stores. Now, it's super fun to imagine that there's this weird conspiracy and that the executives are in Amazon offices twirling their mustaches and drinking champagne about how they can screw everybody over and sell everything super duper cheap. But more than likely, what is happening is that Amazon bought a bunch of product and it didn't sell. And Amazon is going to lower that number until it sells. That's not to screw over game stores. That's not because Wizards wants them to do it. It's because they have sales quotas. They have numbers they want to meet. And sometimes, and this is any retail, if you happen to work in retail, I assure you, if you get a low enough number, no matter what the good is, it will sell. It's just a question of what that number has to be. And so Amazon determined that that booster box needed to be $70 to get out the door. You may not like it, but that's what they required. And so Amazon lost money on that sale more than likely, but they made that sale. Some money's better than no money. You're taking a loss better than taking a total bath on the product. Yeah. So it's a little, tinfoil hats are nice, but it's really just people have to make sales, guys, and they got to hit quotas.
Well, yeah, that works for Amazon because they can afford to take a small loss.
Correct.
They can afford to burn money. But what happens is that sets the price for the rest of the industry, and that sets the price for, Tony's Corner Game Store and whatever local outfit you have. Mm-hmm. And they can't afford to do that. They can't afford to sell a box at a 5% loss or even a 2% gain, more than once a year, maybe. So while that's fine and good for the big box stores, that's not healthy for the overall.
Right. And I'm not saying market. It's not, I agree that it can be damaging for what it's worth. But what I'm saying for me is there can both be like the feedback that they shouldn't do this because it damages a whole variety of game stores, but also the fact that there wasn't necessarily this nefarious planning, plotting, stuff in the background. Wizards told Amazon to do so and so.
I agree.
Like, that's silly. That's not how the business works. All right. So let's move on here.
It does all add together, though, to screw over your FLGS, right?
Yep.
Like
it can hurt your FLGS, absolutely.
The increased amount of products that are coming out means that the store has to buy more stuff. The fact that some of those products are failures and a higher percentage of those products are perceived or actual losers in terms of money means that your FLGS is not only having to buy more inventory, but that they're selling less of their bought more inventory. In addition to the fact that we have all of these extra printings, in addition to the fact that we have all of these problems with sustainability in terms of the older formats, it all is adding up to water down the game.
Point of the story, guys, obviously don't, rip yourself off, but do what you guys can to support your local game stores. Sell them some of your singles and buy singles from them. If the product is the same price, buy it from the store.
Because, and the other part, particularly for the Amazons of the world, is that there's a lot of people who jumped on these crazy low prices and got boxes full of crap and dirt and open product and damaged product and stuff that you would never find if you bought at your local game store or a reputable online outlet, like coolstuffinc.com, for example. Either way, let's move on here to some splash damage because, my lord, it just doesn't go away. Today, there was an update from the actual D&D team, as it were. Ruben, tell us sort of where we're at now with this OGL.
Yeah, this statement today was a good one. Overall, today was the best foot forward that Wizards has made. So
an actual factual apology.
An actual factual apology happened. Now, we had a sort of ho-hum medium apology at one point, which was not as good. But today's update has been very good. Basically, and oh, by the way, over the past week, we've been chimed in from lots of popular internet creators, not the least of which was Legal Eagle, which is a huge YouTube channel. Yeah, there's been lots of consternation and lots of discussion about the issue, and we finally got some response from not just Wizards of the Coast, but from the D&D Beyond team and from the D&D, people whose names we can now see. And it's all positive so far. It seems like, from my perspective, it seems like no one in the building wanted the OGL changes. The C-suite people wanted these changes.
Hasbro corporate needed them dollars to go that way.
And I want Wizards of the Coast to make money from Dungeons and Dragons. Sure. I want Dungeons and Dragons to be successful more than just as a folk tradition. I want it to be a successful brand. I do want them to make money. And them buying D&D Beyond and making D&D Beyond better was a great start. 100% on board with them having multiple subscription levels, adding exclusive content to D&D Beyond so that Wizards of the Coast can make more money from Dungeons and Dragons. The OGL was not it, fam, right? Like, we all agree, even if you don't make content, you can be like, that's not how you should monetize a company. That's not, that's just, it doesn't make any sense. So the statement today was them being like, we get it now. And more importantly, the people that didn't get it before appear to get it now. So we're going to work together on this. And the announcement basically was like, we're going to work together on a new OGL in much the same way that we work together on Unearthed Arcana. For those of you that don't know what Unearthed Arcana is, that's Wizards of the Coast official content being added to Dungeons & Dragons through public playtesting in things like the Adventurers League and feedback through D&D Beyond. And, what are the changes that you would like to see to the game? Within the Wizards of the Coast building, they'll say, this is a new spell we're working on. This is a new class we're working on. This is a new adventure we're working on. Tell us what you think about this new subclass for the Barbarian, for this new magic item. And they'll send that out with a survey. And they'll take that feedback, and then sometimes that'll make its way into a splat book. That'll make its way into a new update. They're doing something very similar here. There was some drama this afternoon and yesterday about how much Wizards of the Coast actually uses the feedback that they're given. That was mostly apocryphal. It seems like, from what I know, Wizards of the Coast is very receptive to community feedback. The people that I've dealt with have always used actual feedback. Whether this will be that remains to be seen. But
well, not all feedback is actionable, but otherwise, for what it's worth, I did see the Legal Eagle YouTube video.
I did too.
Which he basically said you don't even really need the OGL for most intents and purposes. But there was another really fantastic podcast called Opening Arguments. And Opening Arguments did the way they kind of covered it was that the Gizmodo piece was more of almost a hit piece than it was something that was trying to factual. And they break it down in there exactly hows and whys. And particularly they break it down in the idea that there was one thing that was super duper wrong with the 1.1. And that was section 12B, where Wizards got license to everyone's content and could do whatever they want with it forever and so on. That's terrible. You should get that out 100%. Whether there should be royalties, whatever, he's a lawyer. They don't care. But he was like, there was some other stuff that was not in the original OGL that can drag Wizards to court, particularly, white power, the role-playing game or whatever, like the Nazis. They can't get the Nazis out if they don't update the thing. They can't get the NFTs out if they don't update the thing. So like, if you want to start at Nazis and NFTs, start there where everyone is in agreement. They're terrible and we don't want that garbage, and you go on. But, it was a really fascinating look from someone who didn't feel like they had no skin in the game, per se. They're just like, here's what the contract looked like. Here's why they need these things in the contract. And here's why they were wanting to change that. But they went way too far, way too fast. That's kind of where we were.
Yeah. There was another source that I was reading of a friend of mine here in LA who works in gaming copyright law specifically. Like that's his job. And I shared it to the Discord. It was a Facebook post. I don't know if it ever made its way to Twitter, from Stephen MacArthur. And I wanted to mention it briefly because he wrote a couple of things in there, before Wizards even apologized that none of this was a draft. This was very clearly a final product.
Right.
That they were like, wait, this was just a draft. So the fact that they're rescinding it actually means something. The fact that they're apologizing for it means something more than them saying, oh no, this was a draft. Like that is a positive step. And for what it's worth, you look for people to learn and change from their mistakes. It seems as if that's the case. So I'm willing to let them learn from their mistakes on this.
It's interesting. Now, I don't know as much about it as you guys, the legal side or the D&D side, but I will say it's interesting to see the community come together in this way, because the closest thing I can think of that I know of that it reminds me of is Nintendo. Nintendo is really, really harsh to their content creators. If you post anything on any platform, social media, Twitch, YouTube, things like that, content creators who produce Nintendo stuff have to be very, very specific and have no audio, sounds, or anything, because it immediately gets copyright claimed. And Nintendo takes the rights to any piece of content that you make using any of their stuff. So that means, Pokemon. I posted a playthrough of me playing Mario Odyssey, and it just immediately got taken from me. Nintendo claimed the rights to all of that content. Now, that is not a thing that the community comes up and rallies around, because Nintendo doesn't really have like a community that's solidified the way that like Magic does. Individual game IPs do, but not necessarily Nintendo brand, if that makes sense. So it's really cool to me to see people standing up for like these sorts of like programs and stuff that would be hit by this. But again, I'm not super well versed in the legal side of things, but I just wanted to point out that that's the only other time I've really seen anything super bad about that. The one point that actually I thought was really interesting that made me think about something differently was
they said, you realize that some of these arguments against the royalties as they have been presented is often the same arguments against progressive tax systems, where if you make more money, you get taxed more for that additional money that you make. And it's like, oh no, don't be too successful or otherwise you'll have to pay more taxes or whatever. And it's like, they're probably going to be successful anyway. And if they have to pay taxes / royalties, they'll deal with it, so on and so forth. I thought that was interesting. I was like, I didn't really think of it that way. But regardless.
It is worth noting at this point in this discussion, obviously Wizards made a huge whoopsie doodle. But it is worth noting that just like how Nintendo is extremely draconian in what they allow their content creators to make, similarly, most big companies are extremely possessive and will go to court at the drop of a hat over anything that treads on their copyright and trademark. The open gaming license, even the 1.1 version, is less draconian than like what Disney has, right? It's worth noting how special Wizards of the Coast is as it comes to their content creators for both Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, and all of their other properties. It is worth pointing out. Now, if you're coming from the opposite direction, if it was Disney making this announcement, then we'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so much more freedom than I used to have. But you can't move in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's a one-way street.
Especially with how dependent Dungeons and Dragons in particular is upon their third-party content creators.
I don't know. So when it comes to Disney like that, I know that there was a guy on TikTok who made a Lightning McQueen car and he got a cease and desist. And he had to, change pieces of the car, and he's still fighting that in court. He made basically a fan car. But I'm wondering, I don't know that I've ever heard of anything as far as content goes, like streaming Kingdom Hearts. Is that going to get me copyright claimed on YouTube? I actually don't know.
I don't know.
I've never heard of anything Disney related getting nailed in that way like you do with Nintendo.
I don't know. I would never want to poke that bear.
I don't know where streaming falls in as it pertains to content creation. I don't know where streaming a game on Twitch falls as it pertains to content creation, trademark, or copyright.
Neither does anybody else. I just want to know. I want to try everyone to recognize what happened to our offices and our bedrooms over the past couple decades is everyone has a television production studio now in all of their devices. Yeah. That's insane. Those used to be complete outfits and entire job roles to do the editor and do the sound and do whatever. Now everybody can do it in their damn phone. So the paradigm has shifted so far, it's hard to keep up, quite frankly. Yeah. And I would just to put a bow on this one, looking at it, I feel like the worst mistake that was made here was not the 1.1. The worst mistake was a week of nothing. Was a week of fester, was a week of, fear and uncertainty and doubt and videos of doom and gloom, and there being no response whatsoever. Canceled live stream after canceled live stream, and was it 7 days? Was it 2 weeks? Whatever it was, whatever that very long stretch was.
A little over a week, but
it was painful, man. It was really painful.
It was painful.
And gears started turning in that time period that would not have turned if this post had came up 2 or 3 days after everything had started exploding versus now.
I agree. It would have been less bad, but I don't think it's necessarily possible because this was leaked, whether it was leaked on purpose or leaked on accident. There's a 3 to 4 day period of how is this actually going to go? How, is this going to blow over? Are people going to be upset? Are they going to enjoy this or whatever? And then there's the 3 days of making a plan. Yeah. So I would argue that a week of nothing is probably normal. Yeah. It's going to take them that long to figure out what the community thinks and what their response needs to be to formulate, talk to the lawyers, and then make it.
I will add that this was leaked in mid-December and that no one was in the office over the holidays. We know how that works. And I understand that the week we're talking about was the first week of January. Right. But
someone was unhappy with their bonus.
Right. Everyone's groggy.
Leaked it.
Well,
everyone's, you know,
from what has been coming out, it appears that in mid-December, like the big outfits, the Critical Roles and the Paisos were given that sweetheart 15% royalty deal. And then later it was, okay, 20% for Kickstarter and then 25% for everybody else. And because they've already done these sweetheart deals, which they can't talk about, you know, that's not going to be, you know, it's not going to end those companies or whatever. They're going to deal with it. But then
those sweetheart deals are like, you're calling them sweetheart deals. They sound more like shakedowns to me of like, you know,
there still are.
This is a nice D&D product you have. It'd be a shame if something were to
destroy it,
DMCA it. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, when you pull out the gun and you put it to their head and you put the gun away, you still put the gun to their head.
Right. That's the thing, is that there's a lot of trust that has been lost here.
And that's what hurts the most. But let's go to something fun and different and not D&D. Smite. I have never played this video game, but now I'm interested because there's a crossover with Magic the Gathering. Yay! What the hell is Smite?
I've also not played Smite. Have you?
I think I have. Is this the borderline, like, sort of tower defense where there's like lanes and you actually play the hero, if I'm not mistaken?
I believe so.
Maybe chat will tell me.
Yeah, chat, help us out.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I have played this.
Okay. All right. That's kind of neat.
So you've got some MTG characters coming to Smite. Is that a thing that will interest you?
I mean, I played it for a sponsorship, and I remember thinking it was fine. I don't ever remember feeling the urge to go back and play it outside of said sponsorship. But like having, you know, characters and IPs that I really enjoy. I'm a big League of Legends fan, so I love MOBAs. So I mean, I would definitely be interested in checking it out. I'm not a huge first-person fan, so I think that's what did it for me.
That's fair. But, you know, again, any crossover I think is cool. I mean, yes, we do have the Ghostbusters fighting Darth Vader in Fortnite, so who cares anymore? So
I will say, I mean, I don't know what this game is. This animatic that's playing right now is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It is
like
very dope.
That's dope. Like if we can get whatever that is in Magic, I'm all for it. So I might look into Smite if I get whatever that was, because that's way cooler than any Magic animatic that I usually get.
If I remember, it's free to play and you can actually play in groups. So yeah, I think it was actually pretty fun. I definitely remember enjoying my time playing it. Definitely worth checking out for you guys who like variety games.
Nice. Well, to finish our splash damage, as it were, up at the top there, because we keep those mistakes. Disney Lorcana is my hype train of the year, no doubt. The first chapter, as they call it, is coming on in August 2023. At this point, I mean, I can tell you from the CSIs to the hole in the wall, you know, game store owners, they are like, how do we order this? When can we order this so we can get it ready? Can we do pre-orders and all that good stuff? Again, in the pre-show, my biggest concern is they just don't make enough of it. Like, there's just not enough to go around is my only concern, because I cannot wait to get this product in my hands. I think it's awesome.
Well, I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case. And your original biggest fear is that there was no OP announcement with the first day of announcing that Disney had a card game. And it turned out that they had one. So maybe between the fact that Disney and Ravensburgers are both big game people, this is not their first rodeo, I'm hoping they've accounted for that. They've got to at least have one Evan on the team that knows what he's doing, right?
Right. Gotta be.
One of me in there somewhere. Look, I mean, and obviously for me, I feel like, you know, just make sure that was part of the early plans, because I think it was very important. But, you know, we have a gift set, we got starter decks, we got booster packs, we got booster boxes, like a sort of a bundle type product. All that stuff looks fantastic.
Yeah,
and
I'm looking forward to playing it. I'm looking forward to the promotions. We've not had, I mean, we have not had Disney money in the trading card game space.
It's been a minute.
Evan, can Decked Out do Magic? Can Decked Out do Lorcana episodes for you?
We'll have conversations about it.
I love that.
Yeah, I want to be a Magic
Lorcana content creator, please. Can Disney money send me some Disney stuff?
Hold on. This would be Elder. Hold on, I'm getting there. Elder something Highlander.
I'm a little bit of a magic
elder Disney Highlander, right?
Elder Disney Highlander.
There you go. So they are, as I understand it, going to be
Forgotten Lorcana is a really good shout out. TSS Alloy.
Very nice.
That's a really good shout.
Now at Gen Con, as I understand it, they will be there with some amount of product. I can imagine it would probably be starter decks or something. But if you can make it to Gen Con, you should be able to at least try to get your hands on some Lorcana stuff. And Lord knows it's hot. It is so hot. Let's go.
Don't use the word Highlander. I got to come up with another name. Go on, Evan.
Fair. Well, we're going to turn the corner here to the finisher. Now, we've had Magic's Endgame, and we've had Magic's Age of Ultron, but now we get Magic's Secret Wars. The completed are here. Toxicity is on the rise. And now Luca, Nahiri, Vraska, Nissa, and Jace of all the Planeswalkers have become one. So tell me, as we sink deeper into darkness and more becomes truly lost, what are you holding out hope for with the latest Phyrexian invasion, Ruben?
Well, we're getting the return of poison counters, which hopefully reinvigorates one of my favorite archetypes of all time, Britney Spears remixes.
Let's go.
You're toxic.
Nerd girl.
All right, well, heroes are needed, but I truly love villains. That's actually very true. So I'm looking forward to the Phyrexians rejoining the list of great Magic bad guys with Nicobolus, the Eldrazi, and the greatest villain of them all, the Open Gaming License 1.1.
I mean, the Eldrazi ain't got nothing on that. I'm just saying.
That's right.
Just to let you know. Well, I, for one, welcome our new Phyrexian overlords. So I'm looking forward to Magic releasing Magic Arena Autopilot. So finally, I can shut my brain off and get some work done. You know, there's a Yu-Gi-Oh game that lets you do that, right? That literally,
like an auto battler.
It'll just auto battle your deck for you. It's incredible. That said, that ends another live show, another live episode of Magic Mics. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys. See you next week.
Thank you, Ruben.
Hey, have a good Thursday tomorrow, everybody.
Ooh, and we're not here. Weird.
Right.
As we move on here to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, Alter Sleeves, my co-host, MTG Nerd Girl, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online on our Discord, twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.